The steady hum of the ER at 3 in the morning does something to a person. It either lulls you or it strips you raw, and that night I was raw. Vitals on bed 4 are crashing, I called out, already moving before the monitor finished its complaint, my sneakers squeaking against linoleum that never quite dried from the last mop pass. I'm Dana Whitfield, 29, night shift RN at Cedar Hollow Regional, a hospital small enough that everyone knew everyone's coffee order and big enough that we still lost people sometimes, no matter how hard we fought. I'd worked nights for 4 years because the quiet between crises gave me room to think, and because, if I'm honest, days reminded me too much of a version of my life I'd walked away from. That was the night Marcus Ferreira walked back into it. He came through the ambulance bay doors as a paramedic, not the boy I remembered from Groveport High who used to draw hearts on my chemistry notes and then pretend he hadn't. 11 years had put muscle on him, a beard, a calm authority in his voice as he rattled off vitals to the attending. 11 years had also put a wedding ring on his hand that I noticed before I noticed his face. Except when I looked up, there was no ring at all, just a pale line where one used to be. Dana? He said my name like a question he wasn't sure he was allowed to ask. Marcus? I kept my voice professional, clipped, because bed 4 needed me and because 11 years is a long time to figure out what to say to someone who once mattered enormously and then, without explanation, stopped writing back. We didn't talk again until sunrise, both of us drained, standing in the break room over stale coffee that tasted like scorched cardboard. He told me he'd moved to 3 different cities, gotten married at 24, divorced at 28, moved home to Ohio to be near his mother after her hip surgery. I told him about nursing school, about the fiancé I didn't marry, about choosing night shift because the dark asked fewer questions than daylight did. I wrote you letters, he said quietly, staring into his cup like it might explain itself. After I left for the army. You never answered. My stomach dropped. I never got any letters, Marcus. I thought you just disappeared. We stood there letting that land, 11 years of assumed rejection dissolving into a much stupider, much sadder explanation. His mother, worried about a long-distance heartbreak derailing his enlistment, had intercepted every one before they reached my mailbox. She'd confessed it to him only last year, riddled with guilt, expecting forgiveness she hadn't quite earned yet. I'm not asking you to pretend 11 years didn't happen, he said. I just didn't want you thinking I walked away on purpose. I didn't know what to do with that. Anger at a woman I barely remembered, grief for the years we'd lost, and underneath both, something warmer and more dangerous. The same pull I'd felt at 17, sharpened now by the ache of knowing exactly what it felt like to lose him once already. Over the following weeks, our shifts overlapped more than coincidence should allow. He'd linger at the nurse's station refilling a water bottle that never seemed to need refilling. I'd find myself walking the long way past the ambulance bay. We built something slow and careful, 2 adults picking through wreckage instead of 2 teenagers who'd never learned caution. The complication arrived on a Tuesday when his mother, Elena, was wheeled into my ER with chest pain. I recognized her instantly. Older, grayer, but unmistakably the woman who'd once looked at 17-year-old me like I was a problem to be solved. Professional protocol meant I stayed on her case only until a physician took over, and even then I kept my hands steady, my voice even, because whatever I felt about her didn't belong anywhere near patient care. That part isn't complicated for me. The job doesn't bend for old grudges, and I wouldn't want it to. What complicated things was afterward, in the hallway, when Elena grabbed my wrist with surprising strength and said, I was wrong. I was so wrong, and I've had 11 years to sit with that. Her eyes were wet, frightened in the particular way people get when mortality taps them on the shoulder. Please don't let my mistake cost you 2 anything more. I want to tell you I forgave her instantly, cleanly, the way stories sometimes promise. I didn't. I told her I appreciated her honesty and that some things take more than an apology in a hospital corridor. I meant it kindly, but I meant it firmly too, because I've seen enough patients confuse fear with clarity, and I wasn't going to build a decision on someone else's crisis. It was Marcus who found me afterward, in the stairwell we'd claimed as ours without ever saying so. You don't owe her forgiveness on her timeline, he said. You don't owe me anything either, Dana. I just wanted a chance to know you again, not to collect on some debt from when we were kids. And if I need more time than 11 years, plus however long this takes, then I'll be at the ambulance bay, same as always, refilling a water bottle I don't need. He almost smiled. I'm not going anywhere. I already learned what that costs. I laughed despite myself, and something in my chest loosened that had been tight since I was 18 and mailing letters into what I'd thought was silence. I won't pretend the next months were simple. There were nights I pulled back, scared of repeating a story that had already broken my heart once. There were nights he pulled back too, wary of pressuring someone he'd only just gotten back. We argued once, badly, about whether Elena deserved a seat at Thanksgiving. I said healing doesn't run on other people's guilt-driven deadlines. He said family means showing up messy and unfinished, and neither of us was entirely wrong. I still think about that argument sometimes, wondering if there's a clean answer or if some choices just don't have one. What finally shifted things wasn't a grand gesture. It was an ordinary Sunday, 6 months later, when I found him in the break room teaching a terrified new EMT how to steady his hands before an IV stick, patient and unhurried in a way that had nothing to do with me and everything to do with who he'd become. I stood in the doorway longer than I needed to, just watching. He caught me looking. "Something wrong?" "No," I said. "For once, nothing's wrong at all." That evening, in the parking lot under a sky just starting to go gold at the edges, he took my hand. Not asked, not announced, just reached over like it was the most natural thing in the world, and I let him. We stood there a long moment, two people who'd once lost each other to someone else's fear, finally choosing, deliberately and with open eyes, not to lose each other to our own. Elena did come to Thanksgiving, eventually, at my invitation, not his. I never told her it erased anything. I told her it was a start. She cried into the mashed potatoes, which felt about right for a woman who'd spent a decade carrying a secret she couldn't quite carry. I still work nights at Cedar Hollow. Marcus still refills that water bottle far too often. And sometimes, in the hush between codes, I think about how easy it would have been to let 11 years of silence calcify into certainty, to decide the story was already finished before I'd heard the whole thing. I wonder, honestly, how many of us are walking around right now nursing of events that isn't even true, and what we'd do differently if someone finally told us the truth of it. I don't have a tidy answer. I only know that I'm glad, every single night shift, that I didn't close that door before he had the chance to knock on it again.